Hello, my name is Muhammad Farhan Fadila. Today I will do the presentation for my final exam for the Applied Linguistic course. And here's the problem for the Applied Linguistic final exam. Problem 1. Mr. Thompson is a linguistic studying the use of language in news reporting. He is particularly interested in how language can convey bias, shape public opinion, and influence the perception of news events. Mr. Thompson analyzes articles from various news outlets covering the same events to identify linguistic patterns that may indicate bias. He also considered the impact of these linguistic choices on the audience understanding and interpretation of the news. For the questions, what linguistic features should Mr. Thompson focus on to identify bias in news reporting? Discuss at least three features and explain how they can contribute to biased reporting. Answer for the number one is lexical choices. Lexical choice refers to the specific words and phrases used in news reporting. Bias can manifest through the selection of emotionally charged or evaluative language. For example, using words like terrorist versus freedom fighter can significantly influence how readers perceive individuals involved in conflicts. Similarly, adjectives such as brutal or alleged can subtly shape readers' opinion about events or individuals without directly stating a position. Biased reporting often involves favoring certain loaded terms over more neutral alternatives, thereby influencing the audience's emotional response and interpretation of events. Number two, sentence structure and framing. The structure of sentence and the way information is framed can also contribute to bias. News articles can frame events in a way that highlight certain aspects while downplaying or omitting others. For instance, passive voice constructions, mistakes were made, can obscure agency and responsibility, potentially minimizing the perceived seriousness of an action. On the other hand, active voice, he made mistakes, can emphasize individual culpability. Additionally, the order in which information is presented, exempli gratia, leading with casualty numbers versus humanitarian efforts, can subtly influence readers' perceptions of the main issues and stakeholders involved in the story. For the last answer, number three, quoting and attribution. The way sources are quoted and attributed in the news article can introduce bias. Journalists may selectively quote sources whose views align with a particular narrative, while downplaying or omitting contrary perspectives. Moreover, the prominence given to different sources, exempli gratia, government officials versus eyewitness, can affect the perceived credibility and legitimacy of competing viewpoints. Bias can also be introduced through the use of loaded attribution, Exempli gratia, claimed versus stated, which can subtly cast doubt or reinforce confidence in the veracity of statement depending on the chosen word. The conclusion: Mr. Thompson should analyze new articles for lexical choices that reveal evaluative language, examine sentence structure and framing techniques that influence emphasis and perception, and, and scrutinize quoting and attribution practices that may prioritize certain perspectives over others. By focusing on these linguistic features, he can effectively identify patterns of bias in news reporting and understand how these choices shape public opinion and interception of news events. This is for the problem number two. 1. Imagine you are a language planner working for the government. of a country with a diverse linguistic landscape. The country has several indigenous languages spoken by different ethnic groups, as well as dominant national language used for official purposes. Your task is to develop language policy that promotes linguistic diversity while ensuring effective communication and national unity. Question: how can the government promote the use and preservation of indigenous language through education? Here's my answer. There are 7 points of the answer. For the first is inclusion in curriculum. Integrated indigenous language into the national education curriculum at various levels, from primary to higher education. This can involve offering indigenous language classes as part of the regular school curriculum, alongside the dominant national language. Incorporating indigenous languages into formal education not only ensure that younger generations learn and appreciate these languages, but also validates their importance in the national culture identity. 2. Teacher training and certification. Provide training programs and certifications for teachers provisions in indigenous language. This initiative helps ensure that there are qualified educators who can teach these languages effectively. Teachers' training should focus not only on language proficiency, but also on cultural context and sensitivity related to indigenous communities. 3. Bilingual education programs. Implement bilingual or multilingual education programs where indigenous language are used as the medium of instruction alongside the dominant national language. Research has shown that bilingual education not only enhances linguistic diversity but also improves academic performance and cultural pride among students from indigenous communities. 4. Development of teaching materials. Develop and distribute teaching materials including textbook, workbooks, and digital resources in indigenous languages. These materials should be culturally relevant and age appropriate, catering to different educational levels and subjects. Additionally, digital platform and mobile application can be utilized to make learning resources more accessible to students and teachers in remote areas. Number 5. Recognition and cultural events. Recognize and celebrate indigenous language through cultural events, festivals, and language weeks or months. These activities help raise awareness about the importance of indigenous languages among the general population and provide opportunities for communities to showcase their linguistic heritage. Sixth, community involvement and support involves indigenous communities in the development and implementation of language policies and educational programs. Communities' participation ensures that policies are culturally sensitive and responsive to the needs and aspirations of indigenous language speakers. And the last answer is research and documentation. Support support research initiatives focused on documenting and preserving indigenous languages, including oral histories, traditional knowledge, and linguistic structures. This research not only contributes to academic knowledge but also serves as a resource for language revitalization efforts. The conclusion is, by implementing these strategies, the government can effectively promote the use and preservation of indigenous languages through education, fostering linguistic diversity while promoting national unity through respect for cultural heritage and identity. That's the presentation from me for applied linguistic course for the final exam. Thank you for your attention.